Welcome to a solo episode of Patio Pondering the Podcast. Today is August 22nd, 2025. It's just before 2 p.m. Eastern Time, which puts us at just over an hour, maybe an hour and 10, 15 minutes away from the announcement of the Pro Farmer yield projections for corn and soybean meal that'll be broadcast on AgriTalk PM. Now, it's interesting. The other big event happening that affects me in my life is a little football game in Dublin, Ireland called Farmageddon between the Kansas State Wildcats and the Iowa State Cyclones. Chip Flory is on his way or is in Dublin to partake in the game, so he won't be the one making the announcement. And Brian Grady is no longer at Pro Farmer. He's with Comstock Group. So it's going to be interesting to see how they share information. It's definitely going to be different than I've listened to for quite a while. But anyways, we're an hour and so away from that. I'm going to talk about the crop tour. And you're going to think, why are you talking about crop tour? You weren't on it. Well, I'm going to talk about the crop tour, how it worked when I was there, some of the mechanics that are involved. I'm going to talk about how it affects me. But more importantly, I'm going to talk about the crop tour and how it fits into breaking the black box and the I know something you don't know attitude that sometimes happens when we have information about crop yields and crop production, and apply it to some of the challenges that we have in our daily lives, both at the workplace and at home. Crop tour. It happens every third, I believe it's the third week after the third Monday, third week. It's around State Fair time or after State Fair for us. And it goes from Dublin, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, the eastern route does, starts there, goes through Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, parts of Iowa, parts of Minnesota, ends up in Rochester. Western tour starts in South Dakota, goes to Nebraska, western Iowa, and then up through southern Minnesota before ending up in Rochester for the Indian meeting that he had last night. Now, along the way, you have different routes. When I say different, the routes are denoted as the same. So the highlighted route that goes with the map is the same every year. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to sample from the exact same fields, but the route itself will be the same. So you have people that have been on the tour. I think about Karen Braun, who used to be with Reuters. Now she's with Zaner Ag Hedge. She's been on the tour. This is her, I believe it was 12th time. I think that was why she did the handstand or the cartwheel. She goes on the same route every year. So when she can look at the data and go, this route did this last year, or this route did this the last 3 years, she has the data. I followed this route. Not the same fields, but to follow the route. The other thing about the tour, every night they give a synopsis of what they saw. That synopsis is given as in, here is what the tour found with the samples collected on the routes that we've had for this state. So when they leave Columbus, Ohio, go to Noblesville, Indiana the first night, they collected all the samples they can collect in Ohio, and then they started collecting samples in Indiana. Because they're not done with Indiana, they don't say anything about the Indiana crop, except maybe in some interviews, like, here's what we're starting to see with disease, things like that. But since they're done with Ohio, all the data that was sent to Emily is compiled. They do their analysis to it, and then they say, here's the tour yield for Ohio. Now, okay, so it's yield on corn. It's pods per 3 foot by 3 foot square on soybean. So it's yield on one and pod count on the other. And then that goes through. So they go Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota. So every night you get a number. And I love watching the tour on Twitter, X, because you have people that will post pictures. Here's the sample I took in Allen County, Indiana. Here is the sample I took in Benton County, Indiana. Here's the sample I took in McLean County, Illinois. And you can see some of the variability. And when somebody says, hey, we saw a variable crop in Indiana, you can go back and look at some of those tweets and pictures and go, okay, I can see Blackford County had a poor sample. Allen County had a poor sample. Cass County had a good sample just from the pictures. Now, that's not completely transparent on the data, but it's really fun. Now, I was a scout in 2020, and I was a scout on the eastern leg. 2020 was interesting because you had two people on a route, and the route stayed, or the participants stayed the same. A lot of times you'll have people that'll come in and out. I can be on the tour for 2 days, and I'll go with you. But so I partnered with Doug Waters from southeastern Illinois, And we did the whole route. We started in Columbus, ended up in Rochester. So it was fun because we kind of got figured out what we're going to do. I did the corn, he did the beans, or beans, corn. It worked out well. It was actually a road trip without the road beers, which is kind of neat. And my route, I believe that Doug and I had the highest yield and the lowest yield. And I distinctly remember the highest yield. It was after we crossed over to Illinois on the second day of the tour. And we went in this field, and it was a monster. It was just huge ears. And the thing about the population, it was consistent. I mean, it was packed full of these massive ears. I think we did a 305 yield on that one. And on the fourth day of the tour, just outside Iowa City, south of Interstate 80, we had taken our route had taken us on a side road or just south. I mean, we could spit on Interstate 80, and we'd hit kind of a river bottom area where we had the derecho had come through and kind of given us a tough field to assess, but we made it work. But then we got, it was probably closer to Williamsburg than it was Iowa City, but that area, the rolling part of Iowa, just south of Interstate 80, and we pulled up this field, jumped out, boom, we knew we were in trouble. We walked out our 35 paces, put a rope down, strung it out, and I said, Doug, we got to call Emily. I called Emily Caroline and told her the situation. And I believe Chip was with her because COVID, he wasn't on the route. So anyways, I distinctly remember talking to Emily and saying, I got a 0. And she's asked me a couple questions. And I laid it out. I told her what we did. Walked in her 30 feet, dropped a rope, strung it out. Not only can I not collect any ears, I don't think I can follow the row because it was flat as a pancake. And her response was, it's a 0. Write it down as a 0, fill your paperwork out, send me a picture, fill out the app. We were using an app at the time, and go down to your next one. You got a 0. At that moment, I knew as a scout that I was not part of something that was bullshit. Because the answer that she could have easily said, go find a different field. We can't use that one. I mean, there's no way it's a 0. Go find a better field. She didn't do that. The tour did not say, go find a better field. So we had a 0. So you have Doug Waters and I, 305 in the one day, and we get a 0. Pretty interesting. And we had another couple fields that we hit the derecho as we were going up I think it was 69 there north of Ankeny, where we had some, we didn't have 0s, but we were pretty darn close. And in fact, I've still got some of those pictures. So that made me confident that the tour was good. And that puts me in a position where I can call bullshit when people call the tour the trespass tour. Now, the few farmers that we talked to on our route, they were like, hey, what'd you see? Did you sample my field? It was not a, you dirty scoundrels, get out of here trying to screw me. It was truly, hey, this is kind of neat. I know somebody that had a field sample. The other thing that I kind of hit on is there's this attitude out there that people will say, well, Chippy just tells the tour to cherry pick the good fields. Now, if you are going to do your job as a scout, you do not have time to cherry pick fields. You can't. If you're going to do your 16 to 24 samples in one day along your route, you don't have time to look around and look for a good field because you drive your 20 miles, jump out of the truck to get your soybean and your corn sample from the same stop, and then you got to get down the road. Because particularly when you're in the second half of the day and you need that data to finish out the state's data, you can't dilly-dally. You got to get that data up to Emily so that she can compile it. You can't cherry pick. It's not physically possible to cherry pick. The way that Doug and I did it, he would drive. He drove the whole time. And he would say, he'd set his odometer or remember. He said, okay, I'm at 20 miles at the next road. And I would tell him left or right. And we would turn left or right on the next road. And then we would drive until we had a position where we could take a corn sample and a bean sample at the same time. And sometimes it was a quarter mile down the road. Sometimes we had to drive because we didn't have that situation where you get out and take both samples. So you grab what's there. And as I told you about pulling a 0 and pulling a 305. It's what it was. Ag economists from Illinois have done a really good job of refuting the statistical power of the I get it. But it gives us a random observation that we can make some decisions on. So some of the criticisms about the tour are crap. The ones that are valid are there's not enough samples to make a statistical assessment. Got it. Makes sense. It's math. With still a lot of samples, we can get an indication of what the crop is. And why I like this tour, and it's bolstered with some of the tours, like I think StoneX did one, and Professional Ag Marketing out of Luverne, Minnesota does one that I like. Not as many samples, but it's just made to get an assessment of what the crop's doing, is because it pulls back the curtain on the wizard in the Emerald City. Now, 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, USDA dropped a bomb that I don't think most of us were expecting. Now, maybe the trade was expecting it because it's a shadow number or whatever. But they said we're going to do 188.9 on corn. And I fall into the camp of, we got a good crop. It's not that good. And the problem we have with that number, and I'm going to get back to the crop tour here in a second, is that number that USDA gave us was based upon satellite imagery, NDVI, and farmer surveys. We got a big crop. I don't think it's that big. The tours open the curtain so that we can have a better idea of what's really happening out there. Now, we don't get the raw data. You just don't get the raw data to play with. But you get some glimpses with some of the posts that are made on X. There's a couple people on it, Karen Braun in particular, and Ted Seifert were doing a really good job. There's a group from Canada that did a great job. Oliver Slope from Blue Line Futures did a great job of sharing. So they'd have a picture. Here's what the yield was, the county, and the data. So you could say, oh, wow. They collected one from Allen County where I farm and looked at it going, okay, I could see that, a little bit of tip back, not as mature as some other stuff. So you get some transparency to kind of make your own assessments. And it also helps those of us get out of our backyard-itis. Hey, those in Iowa, we got a banger crop. Well, look at this picture from Blackford County, Indiana. It's not a banger. Take a look at this from Cass County, Nebraska. It's good, but it's not that good. And it brings value to the trade and farmers because it opens a curtain. But as we think about pulling back the curtain and we think about our lives, whether it's at work, it's on our farms, it's with our families, we live in an information age. I mean, think about it. We have access to more information in 2025 than was available from 2020 all the way back to before the burning of the library in Alexandria. We just have so much information. But the real challenge is, what do we do with that information? And when do we have enough information to act? So how do we do that in life? How do we make a decision with the information that we have? And I guess the lesson that we have is information is king, but action is what gives you the edge. So we've got the crop tour that gives us a whole bunch of information. And that opens up some transparency for us to understand really what is out there with the crop. But that opens up that black box of the USDA. Now, I'm not criticizing the people that make the numbers at USDA. I think they do a great job with the protocols they have. I'm just saying the crop tour gives us a little more insight into what might really be there. And we could either refute or bolster what USDA said in August. Now, USDA's number is going to be better in September because they're going to have actual data. But we got into the black box. So as we're thinking about your life and we think about the crop tour opening up that black box, what are some of those black boxes that you face in your life where somebody has information that you don't have or has better information than you or is prepared to make a decision with what information they have, and it might be the same information you have? I don't know. It's tough sometimes for me to make a decision because I've got a scientific mind. And I think, okay, is that enough information? Do I have enough information? There's friends of mine that go, oh, the sky's blue. I think I'm going to go for a run. How'd you make that decision? I'd be going, okay, I've got this to do and I've got this to do. They can make a decision quick on a little bit of information. So think about that as you go forward. As you approach your farm, as you approach your day, as you approach your job, approach your family, how can you balance information with action? And in my case, how can I be more quick with my actions? and maybe use less or the information I have. Maybe it's that perfection gene that some of us that have that got advanced degrees. I don't know. But in your life, how can you make better decisions with the information you have and not let the quest for information hinder you in your ability to make decisions? We got about an hour before the numbers come out for the crop estimate from Pro Farmer. I'm going to end this with this. I want you to keep seeking transparency in your life and work. Don't be the one that knows something that somebody else doesn't know. And if you do, try not to use that information in a vindictive way. And I want you to keep making those decisions with the information you have. If you need more information and you truly need more information, get it. But if you just need more information just to have more information, that's almost as bad as knowing something that somebody else doesn't know. So I'm giving you the power to make a decision with the information you have. Well, thank you, listeners. I know this was kind of an off the cuff, just an expose as you were into my thoughts on the crop tour, on transparency, on making decisions. I want to thank everybody for the likes, the follows, and the shares. I particularly really like the promotion that I got from Jared McDaniel and Chip Flory and Emily Flory Carolyn on their recent episodes. And we're getting some traction that I really, really appreciate. We're going to have more guests. We're going to continue to look at people's ag roots and how those ag roots form them. And we're also going to talk about some timely ag topics, kind of like we are here on the crop tour and the Pro Farmer number coming out later. As always, thank you for the likes, the follows, the shares, and the suggestions for guests.